Thanks, Atul. Gautam, if we could have a few questions here, and then can we open it out to the audience for questions after that? Okay, great. All right. Okay, so since the panel is about how can philanthropists and how can funders support the enablement of individual giving in India, I'd love to learn from all four of you in your contexts, what is the most powerful way in which funders can support in a way that it's non-incremental, right? Like how can we transform the scale or the volume or the depth of what you're doing with what funders could provide? Any order. Yes, Pushpa, go for it.
This is on or the label? Okay. So we heard a couple of the speakers refer to matching, and I've actually seen matching at play since my GiveIndia days. It's the most empowering thing for both the giver and the recipient. From the giver side, I think we're now talking about technologies that enable millions of Indians to give small sums of money very conveniently, and also to show commitment, etc. But often our problems seem so large that people almost feel disillusioned. I mean, most of us in the room are grappling either the problem side or the solution side, but people out there, we are in the 11th year of Danotsav, we are in the, 19th year of GiveIndia, and still millions of people outside don't relate to this. But what we saw with Pulwama and these, disaster thing, millions of people coming to give small sums of money. Today, technology allows you to see that in an aggregated form, when so much of it comes, you can really solve problems, right? So that message has still not gone far for two reasons. One is that when we run small campaigns, say on the Giving Tuesday India site or the medical campaigns and the other stories, it's a lot of hard work when people are giving small sums of money and you don't see many projects going to fruition. But where philanthropists could really help and nudge or even push is to say that I'm going to match. And what Kavita said is you really don't need 100% matching. And from the matching playbook that we saw after the Greater Giving Summit, I think it's around 20% where you guys can tell whether it's 20, 30 or whatever. It gives that real excitement for people to give in greater numbers, or more people feel that they are hopeful at solving the solution, the problem. From the non-profit side, which I understand better, I think it makes two things. One, it creates a sense of urgency to campaign or to fundraise. Otherwise, we are grappling with so many problems, and retail fundraising seems not really high on priority, which is why you'll find that in case of medical emergencies, the family or the person raising money knows that there's really, a deadline, so to say. But here it looks like small amounts of money. Why do we do the hard work, reach out? Even the databases of donors are not organized, etc., etc. But if there is a matching, then you have kind of a sense of, okay, it's going to be powerful, and I can also excite my existing donors and new donors to kind of give, because their giving is going to bring that much of a additional benefit. It also then, the whole crowdfunding tools that you guys have, it begins to make sense for a nonprofit to kind of build on. There again, where there are foundations present here, I would say sometimes the funders are also the reason for nonprofits not feeling the urge to do everyday, to go to everyday givers. I was part of a leadership training program where only 3 people showed up after a fantastic presentation by you, Kavita, about retail fundraising, because for the rest of them, they were like, our 3 years funding needs are taken care of. We have the commitment, so let's focus on implementing the program than to, open up the tap on retail giving. So I would really appeal to foundations and philanthropists saying, why don't you make a small component of your giving as a match so that nonprofits actually then go out there and make use of these fantastic opportunities and platforms and collaborations that the panelists talked about and begin to, like, Rohini had said during the launch of your report about the giving muscle. So the fundraising muscle also needs to be exercised. And with GiveIndia having been there for now almost 2 decades, I think many more nonprofits, and with us having access to 9,000 NGOs on the portal and other total 75,000 NGOs today, GuideStar India is able to reach through email. So how do we get all of them excited about this? I think the current supporters can really do something about it. So these two, and one last thing was from the ecosystem, the government legislation point of view. We're talking about many forms now of giving where, on the one side, there's so much excitement and everything is moving towards enabling greater giving. But every other day, like, we had more than almost 40,000 nonprofits. So just to put the numbers in perspective, the 3.3 million is Maya. It doesn't exist. It's somewhere around 2 million. I still I need to write an article for IDR on the numbers in the ecosystem, and I'm like hesitant because I don't want to put a number there which I can't stick to. But having grappled with this now for almost 19 years, I can say for sure that 200,000 nonprofits are the ones who are filing tax returns. So they are the addressable market, if I can say, for all the givers. Out of that 200,000, we're still talking about only 9 to 10,000 odd we can reach. And all your machine learning and the smart technology you have, we hope we can put that to use to get more of them up there. But where we are struggling with is now FCRA, there are only about 24,000 odd organizations who have a valid FCRA. 6,000 have an expired FCRA. My organization is one of them. Which means that, as on date, we can't receive foreign contributions. We're waiting for the application to be cleared. But with UPI and other fundraising and, any smart fundraising, quick fundraising, we need donor information. So income tax says that about anonymous donations, you pay 30% tax on your collection if it exceeds 1 lakh rupees, or 5% of your annual income, whichever is greater. So that all sounds like quite complicated, but there are many organizations who can raise anonymous donations, but they're nervous about raising, right? Lots of big brands and organizations among the nonprofits, perhaps some among the 30 that you talked about, are hesitant about raising money through these new schemes, mechanisms, a lot of Giving Tuesday India collaborations and opportunities, because they're worried if the tax department will question you. If you raise anonymous donations, so they don't know about the limit, the awareness is lacking, and then they're worried about exhausting the limit and then paying tax, right? And the third is, how do we remove this anonymity using technology? So if you take UPI donations, right, the KYC, or know your customer, has been done by the bank. It's just that information is not being passed on by the bank to maybe the platform or to the nonprofit. Right. And therefore, that huge millions who are going to contribute small bits very conveniently with a lot of commitment, the recipients are nervous about tapping or taking it, right? So how do we collectively, as a sector, come together? And somewhere I feel maybe the philanthropists can move us towards that, because Ingrid, you would agree that we haven't come together as one voice. No, we've been talking about this for a long time. How do we go and represent ourselves, before North Block takes decisions about some of these legislations? We heard the finance minister talk about the social stock exchange, a lot of progressive steps. But these real problems are stopping us from. So the enabler or the big levers that need to get moved are for us to put our heads together and how to kind of get the income tax department and the government to say that if you're receiving money from a source who has completed the KYC requirements, it's just that those details are not exposed to the nonprofit, right, or to the platform, but how you don't put it into the anonymous donation. So some of these legal, compliance, those things also need to be addressed for this to really take off. Another simple thing is 200,000 nonprofits pay tax, but we don't have a reliable list to verify that. So many of us spend a lot of time doing the due diligence again, asking the nonprofits to submit documents. So something like the FCRA allows you to check validity, if only the income tax allowed to do that. They have that list of tax exempt, but it's not a reliable list. So those are
There are
the
quite a few
three,
data that
four
we can
things.
unlock if you were to just understand the income tax, the foregone revenue.
So we discuss at fora like this, but we need to take it to the right tables where these decisions can be made and things can kind of really open up.
Yes, Ingrid's acknowledging, and this is probably an event where we have
I just wanted to add to the matching
Yes.
point that Pushpa made.
Sure.
Providing matching is a great solution, but that's also a one-time temporary solution. What could provide a long-term solution is providing matching for experiments that platforms can run to study and understand what works and what doesn't when it comes to donor behavior.
Yeah.
And then find a way to share that information with each other as well as with our nonprofit partners so that they can benefit from it as well when they're running their own campaigns, either on the platform or independently. So that will really take that matching to the next level of a long-term solution.
Absolutely. Thanks, Kavita. Atul, Piyush.
I think Pushpa covered sort of various points that are very relevant and important for philanthropists to sort of bear in mind as they support nonprofits and giving ecosystem. I think the only thing I would want to add there is that matching specific disasters, matching specific causes, campaigns, timings is one way. Funding experiments that are inherently higher risk is sort of one level higher. But to me, I think the most important is investing in the organizations themselves who are doing these things. And most of the organizations in this space, largely focusing on it, are nonprofits themselves. And the capacity of the nonprofits, whether it is operating nonprofit or platforms, is something that's the wisest way to invest in this. So investing in global giving is the wisest way. They will go on and anyway do experiments of various kinds, whether they use the money in matching or doing experiments is something that's they will have a best judgment on. But I think those investments are very, very useful. And the same is true for for-profit companies as well.
So the only thing I would add to that is, we cannot expect individuals to only be giving online. Okay, there are billions
80% of India's
transactions
is offline
happening daily, whether it is e-commerce, just digitally, or apps, or even offline in your regular kirana store, etc. And I'm a big believer in checkout charity. That if you are making a payment to purchase something, if 1 rupee or 10 paise is added to that transaction, overall, over a period of time, you can really accumulate a very significant amount of money. And so Book a Smile does this online, Make a Trip does it, a few offline e-commerce stores are doing it. I mean, that's a great way, because the intent is there when you're making a purchase, to ask the people and to have a display screen, are you okay to give 1 rupee or 10 paisa towards the cause? The cumulative amount of money that we will raise through that is going to be really huge. And one of the reasons why this is not so easy is again due to regulations because of the anonymous donations that Pushpa spoke about. So I think that's a very important conversation that the entire sector needs to have. And I think the second thing I would want to add is, when we talk about individual giving, we really need to think hard about how to get that culture of giving started in the youth of India. That is the big demographic dividend of the country. And I remember when I was a student, some nonprofits came and we did the door-to-door fundraising. Today, through technology, you can do that digitally. And, philanthropists can actually engage with nonprofits and schools and districts to ensure that whatever are the local problems in a city, in a tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 city or a village, that can be taken care of. Because the youth have so much energy, they want to do good things. If you provide the right technology and enable the ecosystem, you are embedding that habit at a very early age. And I think that is what is very important. I think if people are too late when they start thinking about it, their entire view on giving and, their contribution to society is not the same. So I think that would be my second big point.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I think they've covered pretty much everything that, that the thoughts that came to mind as well. Only in addition, something that we've learned from crowdfunding and why crowdfunding is so popular now among individual givers and retail givers is because of the 1:1 mapping that crowdfunding platforms today by leveraging technology can do, right? Because when individual givers today actually take a step back, something that I think we've very successfully achieved is unknowns giving to unknowns. You know, if when Piyush also spoke about healthcare fundraising or medical fundraising and people giving to friends and family, I think that's a age-old concept which was originally offline, which has moved on to online. But I think as crowdfunding, one big movement that we've been able to successfully achieve is people giving to people they don't know at all. People from Assam are giving to people in Chennai and vice versa, etc. So pan India, even outside of India for that matter, right? About 40% of the transactions now that are flowing on crowdfunding platforms are actually from the Indian diaspora that exists outside of the country. And I strongly believe the reason why we've been able to achieve this is to be able to close loops of every giving activity that is happening. So every time when someone gives money through a digital platform, for us it is extremely important to inform very deeply to the user exactly how the money has been utilized and what is happening with the money up to 6 months post making the transaction. So I think certain investments, when we talk about the non-profit sector, certain investments that can be made on ground. I know Sattva works very deeply with the data gathering from the grassroots level in terms of impact monitoring and evaluation of what's happening. I think certain investments on those front will further enhance retail giving because people love to know what exactly happens with their money. And if we can achieve that 1:1 mapping, I think we'll go a long way to achieving greater contributions coming from a lot of people in terms of retail.
Absolutely. Thanks, and it actually segues well into the question that I was going to ask. The second part of this discussion today entirely is about how do we leverage technology to further enhance giving. And while today giving is becoming more and more convenient, you just tick a box when you're taking a ride, or sometimes you don't even do that, the box is already ticked for you, right? Like, so you are just giving as you take a ride, as you book your next train ticket, as you shop in the Flipkart, amazing festival and so on. How do we balance that huge convenience of, that moment of just not even knowing which non-profit, but saying, okay, I've given this ₹1, to being able to engage with that cause, because technology in some way sanitizes that experience, right? So to this, especially to Piyush and Atul, Kavita, how are you thinking about giving enabled by technology, but where you're able to make the connect between the giver and the cause and get them engaged?
I think Book My Show is a very good example where they have a opt-out, check out charities. You have to go and uncheck yourself if you don't want to pay that ₹1 roughly for a ticket as a donation with a ticket. I think what they have done is, and I really like their model, they have, the product is called Book a Smile. And they have a separate microsite that is called Book a Smile, where they actually very regularly go and update where the entire money that they are raising is going, with the impact of each one of these programs, how they selected the non-profit. It's a very well done product there. And I think it's a balance that they have chosen between making it extremely convenient, which increases the overall pool of amount in terms of giving, but making sure that you're able to give people all the sort of comfort that the money is actually doing what it is supposed to do, changing lives of people. The other way to do that is, I think Zaheer mentioned that it is very important for them to go and actually close the loop for every dollar they take. And as GiveIndia, we've been doing it for last, very long time, that every single rupee that you go and donate on GiveIndia, even if it is 5 months later that you actually know what happened with that money, we should go back and show the impact of every dollar that people give on the platform. Because if that is not closed, that donor you lose for life, not just for yourself, but for the ecosystem. And that is far more damaging than just taking that money and sort of saving that cost on doing those things. And so I think closing the loop is a huge thing.
Just related, have you seen this being different in the committed giving you talk about, subscribed giving? Does it take more engagement to convert someone from one time to commitment?
See, committed giving or subscription giving, as we call it, is is a product where converting somebody is much more difficult and expensive because not everybody is ready to take a monthly commitment. But once you have somebody on that, it is actually very easy to engage that person because person is actually donating every month. So there is a monthly sort of trigger, even if we don't create it from the payment gateway that they have paid 500 rupees again this month. But along with that, it is very important for us to go back immediately and go back and say, here is the person you are supporting with this money every month. And give an update on what's going on in the life of that person. And it's a huge opportunity for engagement. We have seen that 25% of the people who we acquire on subscription come back and within the first 30 to 40 days come and take the second subscription. Wow. And this is something that we don't even go and market to them. We don't go and say, can you take a second one? But they come back with the trigger of the first deduction, especially when they are assigned a particular beneficiary that they are supporting. So they go and say, look, you are supporting this child or this person, and they come back and feel like they should expand the family and add one more person to that giving circle they have.
Okay, no, that's interesting too. Piyush, did you have a point?
I think both Atul and Zaheer have captured the key points. I think I want to build on something that Zaheer mentioned earlier in his presentation. I think persona. I think leveraging technology, there is a lot that we know about the people who are visiting these campaigns and what are they more likely to contribute towards. And the reality is, many of you may not know, but you know, even which color you use for your button, or you know, what is the size of that button, or what is the message that you actually use, makes a very substantial difference. So we've done a lot of experiments just to even think about what is the default donation amount that we actually put on our platform. And so, you know, we started it at 2,000, moved it to 3,000, 3,500, 4,000, and even 5,000 now. And we saw that, you know, a lot of people do not know what is the right amount of money to donate. They're looking at us to actually give them that reference point. So even very, very small behavioral science things, leveraging technology can make a very big difference to somebody who's clocking, you know, really lakhs and lakhs of transactions every single month. So I think we know that nonprofits have a lot of activities to do. They have a lot of programs. Many of them are, you know, stressed about just their day-to-day operations and survival. But I think one core message that I'm sure most of us will agree on, that it's very important to start building the foundation to have a lots of everyday givers to be coming on your platform. Even if you have 100% CSR funding today committed for 3 years, very important to lay the foundation using technology in a very smart way, because that's the only way your program is going to be sustainable in the very long run.
Absolutely. With that, if we can go over to the audience for any questions.
I had one more thing to add.
Oh yeah?
And one thing to add to Atul's.
Okay, because we have 5-10 minutes and
Sorry, I'll just
lots
make it
of
really
hands
quick.
popping up. Yes.
Keep it really quick. Around engagement, I think closing the loop also, there's a huge aspect of how technology can be used to keep donors engaged, keep donors, the communication cycle going. And I think that is where with WhatsApp opening up its APIs for communication, where the readability now has suddenly gone up, right? Because we were working with emails and SMSs which were failing in terms of modes of communication. So with these new modes of communication that are coming in and leveraging some sort of technology and creating user personas and how people like to consume information, I think it has become very easy to create conversations with donors now, thereby which the steering of donors into coming back and giving again and again becomes fairly easier now than it was before.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Just 1 minute,
Yes.
if you can give me.
Yes, okay.
So picking from this, you know, communication becoming easy, I wanted to talk about storytelling. As part of Giving Tuesday, there is My Giving Story is something that's been very popular. And in India also last year, there were 64,000 plus votes for some 250 stories that were submitted by nonprofits. So this whole thing about, you know, especially in Checkout Charity that they mentioned, since that there isn't that one-to-one connection that Atul was talking about for some of the committed giving donations. It's also nice when you have celebrations like Daan Utsav and Giving Tuesday. One, there is an overall visibility or a heightened decibel of about giving and communications around that. And more people, so rather than kind of bucket giving of time, giving of money, and giving of material into separate silos, These festivals are opportunities where people can talk about their giving experiences. And as per this study that you did last year, 67% of people who told stories were the ones who gave time. So, here you have people doing checkout charity without thinking the intent is there, but then you just give and move on. You create occasions like Dan Utsav and Giving Tuesday where people tell their stories. And actually, we've just started our kindness challenge. You have the Hafta challenge, and a whole lot of people are doing small random acts of kindness. My colleague Dipti is here who can say that more than 100,000 people in this week are celebrating small acts of giving because 35,000 chits printed by one company, thousands of chits that have already gone out, they're going into the Mumbai metro, etc. So giving people through these festivals occasions to engage in offline non-tech activities of giving, but using tech platforms and communication channels to talk about their giving is a way of bringing more people into this. And the last half a minute point was about sharing data that Kavita talked about. Tomorrow we have Woodrow here who leads data insights at Giving Tuesday globally. And there's a workshop that NPCI is hosting. So, a few of you who are interested, you can get in touch with me about this workshop. And the study that you conducted, Aarti and CSIP and Abhijit this year, last year about the Giving Tuesday thing. What quickly I want to say is each of them have fantastic insights, but we're still talking about everyone's little own pot of data. What Giving Tuesday allows you is maintaining anonymity from the recipient side and the donor side, yet pooling your data, pouring it all into one big pond, and then gaining that insights might be a good way for us, the entire ecosystem, to take this. So last year, the enormous amount of study you did on this and the overall everyday giving report, I think there would be much richer insights that can come, and that will also improve our advocacy as a sector to get government also to get moving on certain issues if we have this kind of data. So that's where I would start.
Woodrow told me that there are 300 data scientists who work on crunching data for Giving Tuesday Global. I think if we get to 30 in India, and with the amount of data we have, that would be a win.
With this little
soon, right?
slice of data you had, you said 50 plus countries last year participated in contributing for Giving Tuesday India, right? Or that 49% were new donors who came to the platform. These are all like, based on little data we have this, but if we have lots more data, I don't know, we'll learn a lot more about giving.
Much richer, yes. With that questions, and do we have them? There,
Hello.
the lady there. If I two requests, if you can introduce yourself, and two, keep it short and a question strictly.
My name is Mukta Nayak. I'm from the Center for Policy Research in Delhi. And so I wanted to talk to the community side. You said there were many motivations for giving, and one was community. So in this ecosystem where we've created platforms in which individuals are donating to causes, what happens to causes that are very local, hyper-local, and community causes, especially in a situation where we're losing our older sort of sense of community, and we are so it's harder for people to form people-to-people associations for civic society initiatives. So I'm just wondering how we can pair databases of NGOs who can be conduits for this kind of fundraising with campaigners who want to raise money for community spatially located causes with this power of individual giving. Because as a policy researcher, I'm coming across a lot of this kind of campaigner struggling for funds, for raising awareness, or for doing very small kinds of actions that can have very huge impacts on communities. Things like culture, public space, just to give you an example.
Got it. If we can take 2, 3 more and then answer them together.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Now I have 5 of you who can collect the money and give it to me. Who should I go with? Number one. And who can give me like 1 to 2 crores, or not 5 lakhs and 10 lakhs, a large amount of money? And do you withhold some percentage out of that?
Sure. Okay. Yes, the gentleman at the back, and one question here. There.
Hi, I am Priyankus. So I have been working with some underprivileged children and some villages in Assam. So my doubt is, like, my understanding of crowdfunding is all over your network and your friends. So if I want to do some crowdfunding, I have a network. I'm working in corporate, so I can get some donations. Like Piyush has given one example of one corporate employee like getting 46 lakhs. So whatever a rickshaw puller or a daily wage worker, if he want to do crowdfunding, who will help him? So in India, the basic problem, like 70% people will face that problem. So this technological thing, whatever we're discussing, it is for us only. So if you even like, if you go for one NGO working in interior part of Assam, Meghalaya, or whatever it is, in tribal villages, they do not have access to mobile even. So how to leverage them? So there should be some platform who will identify them. Like we have to go inside actually. They do not know about us. Somebody from us should go in that particular place and do crowdfunding for them. So can something like that can be done by us?
Got it. Yeah. 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 We can hear you.
Okay.
An educational trust. I work for the United World Colleges, and convincing alums who themselves have gone on scholarships that those rich people will give money, as opposed to I can give a little bit. So, how can we leverage technology to create messaging that creates enthusiasm in the realm of giving?
Got it.
Hello.
Yeah. Can
My name is Ralphie Girard.
Okay.
I represent the Rotary International in District 3141.
Okay.
I was very impressed by many of the points that were said, and I would like to basically appeal to all of you how Rotary International can help in raising money for projects which are humanitarian. The only challenge is we are world's most effective charity where no administrative costs can be deducted from the money raised. 100% money raised has to go for the cause directly. Even the clubs don't take any money out of that. So how can you help us?
Sure. Thank you. So we want to start with the question from the researcher on communities as opposed to the individual and also harder causes, and then those that are far remote from technology and how can they leverage technology for giving before moving on to ma'am's question here.
So I can respond to the first question. I think there is a lot of work that's happening on, so there are two parts to your question as I got it. One is hyper-local giving. And the second part was difficult causes that otherwise don't get the traction. In terms of hyper-local, there's a lot of action that's happening in various platforms that enables these things. Increasingly with CSR, we see that volunteering has started to become almost like a demand from the corporates when they give the money and say, we have a lot of volunteers who want to come and channel that. That is encouraging some of that hyper-local activity. In some cases, volunteers engaged well can also go and do fundraisers at large scale. And Doc is here from Bhumi somewhere, and he does an amazing job in getting all of his volunteers to not just volunteer, but also create a large-scale fundraising by doing things online. Teach for India fellows also go and raise money online, even though in many cases these are fellows, but even volunteer ecosystems. So encouraging increasingly your volunteers and support system to go online and raise money is, I think, one thing there. I think technology will start to play an increasingly more important role with time, with platforms like Meesho enabling donation category. It actually enables people to give to the way people have been giving for ages in their hyper-local environments to causes they care about. This will actually enable the same thing happening through technology, through simple WhatsApp transactions that otherwise wasn't happening. For difficult causes, it's actually a very tough problem to solve. It pains me to see that a paper boat ad is more emotional than one of the most emotionally appealing non-profits, right? You take any non-profit, all of us, we do really amazing work, but you see for-profits having the resources to be able to storytell that most non-profits struggle with. And if easily relatable problems don't know how to sell the stories, tougher problems actually have it. It's much more difficult to solve for that. But I know non-profits like Center for Wildlife Studies and many others, some of these organizations have a very, very strong set of limited number of supporters, and they participate in the matching programs that we run. So right now, as we speak, there is a charity Housey that we are running, where we are giving awards up to 10%, 20%, 25%, and these difficult to relate to causes actually use these opportunities to multiply the money that they do and reach out to their donors.
Actually, I'd like to add to that. What we've seen is it doesn't really matter too much what cause you work on, even if it's a research-based organization. If you remember the example of the Ice Bucket Challenge, that was for a research. And you remember how much funds that raised. It's really about the storytelling piece and about how you campaign for that cause. So sometimes, yes, it's easier to storytell for an education project, but you can find creative ways even to fund research.
Right. Any points on how we could help, organizations and people, causes located in far removed from technology to access?
Okay.
Yes.
No, you go ahead.
I think it's bringing back a point that Piyush made earlier about finding the right fundraisers, right? Finding the right people who can champion a cause like this. I'll take an example of Assam. We had somebody as part of our team in Ketto who was from the Assam region, and every year during the floods, etc., we were, as a platform, we were always looking for somebody to champion this cause because maybe it's not penetrated those states yet. However, since this gentleman, took up the initiative to champion this cause and raise money around it, I think by virtue of all the platforms that, like Facebook and WhatsApp and Instagram, the world is actually closer to technology than they believe that they are, and it becomes really, really easy to reach out to like-minded people over there. So I think to answer his question is, it's everything is about finding a community of champions who pick up these causes and then take it forward to their community, because everyone is in touch. And once that penetration takes place, moving forward, the idea or the ideology of using a platform like Ketto or Impact Guru becomes a little more mainstream in their thinking also, and that is where the entire movement of raising money online starts.
Yeah, I wanted to give actually an example of an organization called Tribal Health Initiative in Sitlingi in South India, and around the time that GiveIndia started, at Sitlingi there was no telephone connection or internet. So you don't have to be in that place to fundraise. They had volunteers from the nearby city who would actually put out their message in the online world, and every week they would go and check mail. So today it's much easier. I also want to talk again about the QR codes. As we sit here, at IOC petrol pumps, there are NGOs there collecting money from rickshawalas to anyone who just come with their mobile phone and they do the QR scan and they are donating. The donation boxes where coins used to be dropped are disappearing, and people are now just looking at the QR codes, whether it's a website or it's the UPI QR code, people are scanning and donating. All of that is possible. And while we are speaking here, I just saw Anshu over there, and we are running a campaign about reaching the remotest person in the country, which Gunj does very well in times of disaster and otherwise. And while we are celebrating 150 years of Gandhi, the quote that inspires me is that the soul of India is in its villages. And certainly we are talking about technology and these concepts of giving to actually make it reach there. And like Asha said in the morning, during events like this, everyone is empowered to give. So the beneficiaries also give back. And I heard Sir talk about, the cost of giving. Many of these platforms are keeping the cost really low. And if I am correct, the UPI fundraising through the Beam UPI thing there's no cost up to 2,500 rupees a transaction till end of this December. Yeah. And that might get, so there are really avenues. It's just the awareness and figuring out how we can take a lot of offline activities online, make giving more efficient, and all of those things are very much doable.
Thanks, Pushpa. I think we're run out of time, so I'm sure there are a lot more questions, but we have the panelists during the break and we have a lot more exciting topics coming up. So it's been great. I mean, we've talked about technology right from discovering nonprofits, which is still a drop in the ocean despite a lot of efforts that's gone on in the last 2 decades, to then looking at storytelling that can make a powerful presence digital, to then making giving as easy as, taking a cab ride today, and how giving can become a part of your lifestyle and really convenient. And then also talked about commitment, like how do we go deeper and get people engaged? And it seems to be that can we have a blend of offline and online and champions across, being able to, then successfully get some of these efforts to have their online wins. So with that, thank you so much, panelists, for your time today. Thank you, audience. I hope you found this useful and had some points to take back to think about. Thank you.